fellow Earthlings, and welcome once again to Level Your Playing Field. My name is Ginger Ferrer, and I'm a community advocate. I wanted to send my condolences to the community of the Charleston church shooting. It's almost inconceivable that someone can walk into a church and sit there for over an hour and then start shooting. 21-year-old young person. We don't know if he's mentally disturbed or if he's just an out-and-out racist. And it's almost like our country has finally joined some of the world community with their hate and their discontent. It's so open, it's so blatant, it's so consistently going on that it's like, everyday normal procedure. I have a short clip, and then I wanted to talk a little bit about this horror on American soil. So, John, whenever you're ready.
5, this evening we received a call of a shooting that had occurred at the church here on Calhoun Street. When officers arrived, they found a number of victims inside, and we had also individuals that were transported to the MUSC Emergency Trauma Center. As the investigation continued, we were able to determine that there were 8 deceased individuals inside of the church. 2 individuals were transported to MUSC. One of them has died. So at this point, we have 9 victims in this heinous crime that has been committed. We are looking for a white male, approximately 21 years old, sandy blonde hair, and he obviously is extremely dangerous. And what we are asking that if anyone in the community has information about this particular individual, that he contact law enforcement immediately.
This is a most unspeakable and heartbreaking tragedy. In historic Emmanuel AME Church, the mother church of the AME churches, people in prayer on a Wednesday evening, a ritual, coming together, praying and worshiping God, to have a awful person come in and shoot them is inexplicable, obviously the most intolerable and unbelievable act possible. The only reason someone could walk into church and shoot people praying is out of hate. The only reason. That it is the most dastardly act that one can possibly imagine. And we will bring that person to justice as soon as possible.
This church has a long history of fighting to survive, and I'd like to share a little bit with you. The church is known as Mother Emmanuel by those who love her. The Charleston church was the site of Monday's horrific shooting. It is a historical Emmanuel Church, Charleston, South Carolina location that holds a central place in African American history. One of the largest and oldest black congregations in the South, Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church roots reach back to 1816, when black church members withdrew from predominantly white Charleston Methodist Episcopal Church over disputed burial ground, according to its website, www.emmanuelchurch.org/churchhistory.php. Emmanuel Church. Under the leadership of Morris Brown, a free shoemaker, they organized a church for people of color. The new church was burned down in 1822 when one of its ministers and founders, Denmark Vesey, was discovered as he tried to organize a major slave revolt. The plot created mass hysteria throughout the Carolinas and the South, and Vesey was hanged, according to Emmanuel's website. The congregation was then forced to worship underground after black churches were outlawed altogether in Charleston in 1834. This is decades after the Constitution was signed, and freedom of speech and religion was part of the Constitution. The black church experiment was not to be repeated in the southern city until after the Civil War. The faithful did not waste time after the end of the Civil War, and in 1865 the name Emmanuel was formally recognized. The present church was built in 1891 by African Americans. Emmanuel AME is part of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, the world's oldest Christian denomination founded by African Americans. The church was born in protest against slavery, against the dehumanization of the African people brought to the American continent as laborers. And see, the thinking is the perceived thinking, because of course I don't know what they were thinking at that time and into the present, that human beings were put here specifically for the mindset of those that choose to enslave them. Civil rights icon and a co-founder excuse me, of the NAACP, W.E.B. Du Bois, called the AME Church a social center of astonishing efficiency, where the poor and the ostracized met in human sympathy, mutual charity, and encouragement to fight the battle of life. Now, I can't help but wonder, the parents of this boy, this 21-year-old, again, we don't know if this boy had a mental problem. I don't know. It's not known how he was raised with regard to racism or non-racism. But to be as cold and as calculating as it appears that he was and is, he sat with the people that he was going to shoot for over an hour. And there were small children in that church. There were human lives in that church. And this racism factor is one of the biggest hostage takers in our country. And again, because the Constitution exists, it's not supposed to exist at the level that it does, this mindset of slavery and racism. But it's so out of control. It's like the polluted air that we breathe. You can't get rid of it. So again, my sympathies to that community and to the family members who have lost their loved ones, and to the African community as a whole. Now, before I forget, there are some Hillary Clinton volunteers that are having get-togethers to sign up and help find supporters and volunteers. Now, the next one is today at 72 Concord Street, Victory Park, between 3 and 6:30 p.m. today. There is a house party with former NHDP Chair Kathy Sullivan between 7 and 8:30 p.m. tonight at the home of Carol Jordan at 333 High Street in Candia. Again, there is a house party Thursday, June the 18th, between 7 and 8:30 p.m. at the home of Carol Jordan at 333 High Street in Candia. On Saturday at the Londonderry Flea Market, from 10 to 3 p.m. at 5 Avery Road, Londonderry. They're looking for people to step up and sign up as supporters and volunteers. Canvas Kickoff. Join us for the first canvassing of this campaign, Saturday, June the 27th. Time and location TBA, to be announced. I speak at almost every segment of airtime since I've been on the air, at least in the last 5 years, with regard to the workers' compensation fraud that is not addressed in the state of New Hampshire. And I just wanted to give you what it cost, your taxpayer dollars. This is a printout from the last 3 months of my prescription. And there is one prescription here that just blew me out of the water. It is called atorvastatin, 20 milligrams, 90 pills, $419.99. Your tax dollars. Symbicort, one inhaler. This Symbicort, $354.99. $354.99. Your taxpayer dollars being defrauded. As residents of an American country and the state of New Hampshire and the city of Manchester, your tax dollars are being defrauded. And they've been defrauded for the last 25 and a half years because of fraudulently denied valid workers' compensation. The solvency of Social Security is in serious jeopardy. Can you imagine if you get hurt on the job, either as a construction worker, as a police officer, as an indoor employee where the air pollution damages your breathing, and you fall on hard times and your workers' compensation is denied, and you have to rely on the systems that were generated for the emergencies in a human's life, and they don't have the money to pay to provide you this Symbicort or any other kind of inhaler. Proventil is $263.99. That's the one that I carry all the time. That's a yellow inhaler. And then all of the other $125.99 for Benazepril. Nambutone, $75.99. And the reason I keep bringing this up is because there's an election. And I am hoping that some of these presidential candidates will take a serious look at this problem. Because in the state of New Hampshire, according to those that know about this, they have done nothing. Can you imagine paying out of your own pocket $354.99 for one inhaler? Think about it. Last week, I ran out of time, and last Thursday, I wanted to talk about Flag Day, which was coming up that weekend on Sunday, the 14th. But I ran out of time, and I was motivated by this article that was in the Union Leader, and it talks about Mary Pickersgill, and it turns out that she was the daughter of Betsy Ross, who put together the first flag ordered by George Washington, the first American flags with the stars and stripes. And so it was very interesting to note that these things were never taught at school, as far as I know. They were not taught. They were not taught in school. The flag for the state of New Hampshire came into being on June 21, 1788. And it gives you in the paper all the flags of the United States for each state, besides our American flag. Excuse me. Mary Young Pickers Gill was the daughter of Betsy Ross, and she and a host of women put together a flag. It contained 400 yards of material, 15 stripes and 15 stars, one for each of the states of the Union. The stars were made of cotton, and the stripes and blue canton were of English wool. The flag weighed approximately 50 pounds, and according to Wikipedia, it took 11 men to hoist it up, but according to the Union leader, they report that it was 9 men. The banner weighed 50 pounds. 9 men were needed to hoist it into the air. The flag used more than 400 yards of fabric. Mary was paid $405.90 for the larger flag and $168.54 for the smaller one. Today, the Star Spangled Banner is on display at the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History. A year later, in September 1814, Mary Pickers Gill's enormous flag inspired a young lawyer, Francis Scott Key, to write a song about the morning after the Battle of Baltimore. He called it the defense of Fort McHenry. He wrote it to a popular British tune, Do You Know the Song? And of course, that's, the Battle Hymn of the Republic. So it's interesting to note that women played such a huge role in the history of this country in the sense of really important issues, including by hand, sewing by hand, a flag that weighed over 50 pounds. And she had to recruit a lot of the women in her family and friends in order to complete the flag. She made enough money to buy the house that she used to rent, and it became a landmark. Now, last week I spoke about the embezzlement of taxpayer money by an government tax consultant and another woman who cheated the Veterans Administration out of thousands and thousands of dollars. And this week, the Little League, Enfield Little League official charged with embezzling $12,500 from the league. Christy, with a K, Perez Bonilla of Suffield was arrested Tuesday after confessing to police that she took the funds while treasurer of the league. When Enfield and Townsville Little League merged earlier in the year, officials discovered the $12,500 was missing from the league's account. The funds for the league are limited. It's not an unlimited supply of money for these kids. The money taken came from grassroots efforts such as donations, concessions, and tournaments to raise money. The money stolen was crucial to league operation. And why do I read this to you? Because there's been exception taken by City Hall and Public Access to the question, the unanswered questions about how the monies that Comcast provides Manchester Public Television services. It's supposed to go to Comcast. It's supposed to go to the station, but somehow it ends up at the mayor's office. And then he sits down and decides which station is going to get how much money. And how does he arrive at those amounts? And who are the beneficiaries of it? And how is it spent? Because when we were at MCAM, we had the board members of MCAM were producers and officials. It was a mixed body of board members. And we would have meetings, minutes were taken, votes were taken, suggestions were made, information was shared. But that is not the case here. And Deborah Ulster is a producer here. And she started asking questions. And it would appear that it took some of the people here took exception, as well as the mayor's office, to her inquiry, because the people have a right to know. The Comcast money comes from the charges that are paid by each subscriber, including you and me, and how that money is spent is supposed to be known, and how they arrived at the particular amounts that were delegated, and also if the board members receive any kind of funding as members of this board that never meets, or if it meets, nobody knows about it. So this is one of the reasons that I read these stories about fraud, because fraud can happen anywhere at any time if nobody's watching. If nobody is auditing or checking the books or doing anything to monitor the processes. Otherwise, these people could not have gotten away with it. The woman from last week, in fact, it was $7.2 million that she managed to hoodwink from the IRS. Your tax dollars. What for? For her gambling habit. And this other woman who claimed to be a veteran, and she got benefits because somebody dropped the ball at the processing, at the beginning of the processing of her paperwork. And there's nothing in the paper about the person that allowed that to happen. Only the fact that the woman got caught and she's in jail. In the seemingly never-ending reported disclosures regarding misappropriation of funds in various alleged positions of financial operations comes yet another disclosed in less than a week, apart from the ones reported last week, which I just spoke about. Monies easily defrauded from veterans programs. Another 7.2 plus American tax dollars defrauded by one woman operating a landscaping company. Somehow she managed to defraud your tax dollars to the tune of $7.2 million to fund her gambling habits and a high level of leisure and entertainment. Why do I readdress these stories? Well, this week there is another story of fraud with possibly more not yet known or soon to be revealed. This is why the questions are asked here at Manchester, New Hampshire, by concerned citizens as to the auditing reports the public has a right to know. How are monies received by TV23 and other channels delegated? By whom and how are these figures arrived at? Where does the money go? Where does the money go expense-wise? What are the expenses per se? Why has Mayor Gatzis and his posse of perceived co-conspirators regarding the money received from Comcast to fund public access programming decided to keep as much of these monies as possible and put it in the general fund, also known as their personal slush fund? And where does it go, and to whom is it given, and why? How come the Attorney General's office at Concord, New Hampshire, not curious about these perceived wrongdoings regarding full disclosure of accounting processes and the recipients of said monies, the appearance of seemingly secret and or undisclosed methodology of these inquiries seems to be offensive to those at City Hall and public access who appear to be upset requiring these valid questions. Do board members receive any kind of financial payment for serving on the board? And why is there not a producer on this alleged board of public access? When we were at MCAM, producers sat on the board as well as higher title officials of Manchester and Concord, New Hampshire. Why so much secrecy? As I mentioned at the beginning of this Boo on You segment, the current story shared on air and in the media about people who overstepped their authority handling the financial responsibilities of any company or entity, it would appear it was so easy for them to do so due to the perceived absence of tracking or auditing these procedures or verifying unequivocally the validity of accounting procedures and processes, most especially when one tries and succeeds cheating the services of our veterans. How low can anybody stoop? Seemingly, it would appear it is very easy to do so. So why does it appear that City Hall and public access appear to be so put out by these requests? As a former accountant, my work had to balance. Account identities had to be verified. The books had to balance. If there was a discrepancy, one had to track it. When given charges by the powers that be, the validity of whatever transpired was provided. Otherwise, no disbursement was generated. The books, again, had to balance. So why does it appear to be so very easy to defraud government taxpayer-provided programs at the city, state, and federal levels? Who is really on this very necessary job of protecting these processes? Long before Deborah Ulster began asking these questions, I asked repeatedly, as well as Glenn Ouellette, these same need-to-know questions with no response. But now that another producer has decided to request this information, she is being seen as a troublemaker or an offense to the mindset of some within public access in City Hall. The public has a right to know. Whether they want to believe it or not does not change the fact that the public has a right to know. The muzzling of freedom of speech appears to be an ongoing agenda by some within this small-minded community of officials, but it is against the constitutional right of its own processes. So what is up with all of this? What could you be hiding, and why? I have another Boo on You comment about Comcast. In recent weeks and months, I have tried to pay my bill first online and then by phone. Comcast accounting programs appear unable to process my payment. Second month in a row this has happened. A few weeks ago, my sister and I thought to upgrade our mom's cable service by adding an HD unit, replacing the unit she currently had. I've spoken to this before. Undisclosed to us, Comcast no longer uses the larger HD unit my sister enjoys, but the smaller unit has no channel indicated on it or a clock. So I called and asked not once but 4 times to return the former cable box and take the HD unit back. 4 times the technician, through no fault of his own, had another HD unit in his hands. It was only when I was there in person that it was finally corrected. When the technician walked in with another HD unit, I advised him that this was not what we ordered. He came back with the originally ordered cable box and connected it. How many times can any person make this mistake? When I called to replace the HD box, I used the term in my request to a non-HD box. Yet 4 times in a row they came in with an HD box. And on top of that, the first 2 scheduled appointments were never completed, and nobody called to say so. No one showed up. Telephone tag over and over again became the process until I had to call the home office of Comcast in Pennsylvania to receive the much-needed and delayed service call originally requested more than a week before. So what is going on with Comcast? Why are there so many errors and so much hurry up and wait to get it right? And why do they keep automatically raising their rates every year, most especially for the elder or disabled subscribers who do not have computers? It appears to be less costly to order a bundle that includes the internet, although the customer does not have or use a computer or internet services, than to order just 2 of the 3 services. This does not even contain the 10 years of teeter-totter interrupted services I experienced at my last place of residency in Manchester. It took 8 years for them to replace the wiring from the basement up to the 3rd floor before my services would operate, but not without many visits from Comcast techs after that to try and remedy the most current interruption that popped up with great regularity. So much hostage-taking of a citizen's choices, so a big boo on Comcast. The VA admits it has no contracts in place for billions of dollars spent on veterans' medical care. Now, this is the irony. They have the money, but they don't know how to set up a program for the veterans to get the medical treatments that they're entitled to. Top officials at the Department of Veterans Affairs acknowledged to House lawmakers Monday that they have been spending billions of dollars a year on a private medical care for veterans without contracts, and said it would be too costly and cumbersome to put them in place. They're already doing it. So how could it be cumbersome? VA acknowledges that our long-standing procurement processes for care in the community need improvement. Edward Murray, VA's acting secretary for management and interim chief financial officer, testified, referring to what's called non-VA care. Murray said that serious legal questions have arisen over medical care veterans get outside VA hospitals and clinics, a growing cost that is expected to reach more than $10 billion this fiscal year. The hearings before the House Committee on Veterans Affairs investigation panel was the second of 3 scheduled for the spring to address allegations of billions of dollars in misspending flagged by Jan R. Fry, VA's Deputy Assistant Secretary for Acquisition and Logistics, about contracting practices. The Washington Post reported in May that Fry had sent a 35-page memo to VA Secretary Robert McDonnell in March, accusing agency leaders of making a mockery of federal acquisition laws and spending at least $6 billion a year in violation of contracting rules. $6 billion, taxpayer dollars, and veterans' medical care rights dollars. Fry described a culture of lawlessness and chaos at the Veterans Health Administration, the massive healthcare system for 8.7 million veterans, and said his efforts to reform a wasteful, disorganized contracting process that put veterans' health and taxpayer money at risk have met with resistance from agency leaders for years. So can you imagine that these people that sit with these positions to oversee the processes have been exhibiting resistance to these officials about how they're supposed to operate and why they're not operating accordingly? So how is it that they can get away with that? And why aren't they just taking the hell out of there and replaced with human beings that can act responsibly? And the discourtesy that's displayed to the men and women who have sacrificed so much to defend this country. You know, sometimes Fry, testifying Monday, repeated his concerns that VA has failed to engage in competitive bidding or sign contracts with outside hospital and healthcare providers that offer medical care for veterans that the agency cannot provide, such as specialized tests and surgeries, obstetrics, care, and other procedures. VA has paid billions of dollars in such fees in violation of federal acquisition rules that the agency's own general counsel has said since 2009 must be followed. Murray and other officials acknowledged at the hearing. Frustrated lawmakers from both parties said the lack of contracts represented another case of bureaucratic incompetence they said has become the order of the day at the VA. It's almost like saying they're petulant children and they have no control over their own processes. Get rid of all of these people. And why don't they use these billions of dollars to buy a hospital so that the veterans would have, in whatever location they're located, a hospital specifically for them? Use these billions of dollars to buy hospitals. If the atom bomb can be built and wars conducted under the acquisition regulations, surely VA can deliver patient care under them as well. Representative Mike Kaufman, Republican, Colorado, chairman of the oversight panel, said, and later called the contracting issues an example of bureaucratic lawlessness. Now, they're recognizing all of this, but all of these people are still sitting in their positions. All of these people that have been violating the operational procedures of these matters are still in place. That's like here at City Hall. You know, it's almost like if it wasn't so pathetic, it would be funny, but it's not. Because it is affecting the human rights, the civil rights, the constitutional rights of human beings, of men and women who have stepped up to the plate and sacrificed their very lives and safety to defend this country in all parts of the world. And these fat cats that sit on the Veterans Administration, they should be put in jail for crimes against humanity. Think about it. They sit there and they do not appear to recognize the need for following the rules and regulations that are already in place to provide our veterans whatever coverage they need, whatever care they need. It reminds me of a storyline that a couple of years ago regarding the bulletproof jackets or vests that was supposed to be provided to the men and women in uniform, and how certain American countries had dropped the ball and delivered to those locations vests that did not stop the bullets. Which means that somebody turned a blind eye and let it happen. Otherwise, they could not have shipped those vests to our American fighting men and women across the world. But they got away with it. And the few executives that might have gone to jail, because, again, it appears that there's a government within a government, a behind closed doors mentality that operates our constitutional processes unconstitutionally. Officials The VA officials said they would need to hire at least 600 employees to write and oversee contracts for private care, an expense they cannot afford. They also said that in rural areas in particular, many physicians are nervous about doing business with the government and are wary of the paperwork involved in a contract with VA. So what does that tell you? That medical professionals have been jerked around in the past, and therefore they don't want to run the risk of treating their own homegrown veterans in their communities. Philip Anderson's VA's Assistant General Counsel for Government Contracting said that if a doctor or other clinician is paid, properly billed, and provides a service to a veteran, that effectively constitutes a contract. But Fry and several lawmakers said that practice puts taxpayers and veterans at risk. So who is Philippa Anderson? And why does she think that? When federal contracts are required and you don't use them, there are terms and conditions that are missing from the contract, Fry said. There are termination issues, disputes over fair and reasonable prices, a whole host of issues, safety and efficacy. Without them, the contractor is there to do what he or she wants. VA operates one of the largest healthcare systems in the country, spanning 150 hospitals and more than 800 outpatient clinics. The agency has been struggling to serve not only the veterans returning from Iraq and Afghanistan, but also a surge in veterans who served in the 60s and 70s. VA has been rocked since last year by revelations about long-term wait time for veterans seeking treatment for health issues, including cancer and post-traumatic stress disorder. McDonald's predecessor, Eric K. Shinseki, resigned as VA secretary last year after a cover-up of months-long hospital wait times became public, and Congress has given the system $10 billion in new funding to ramp up private medical care. The agency is urging Congress to pass legislation that would allow an expedited form of purchasing care for veterans who need to go outside the VA system, allowing the use of agreements other than those required by federal acquisition regulations. Lisa Rain covers the federal workforce and issues that concern the management of government. This is from the Washington Post. So it's always the hurry up and wait mentality. These protections should have been in place long before, and not just for the current veteran who's coming home wounded or ill, but since World War II and Korea and Vietnam. I remember visiting my grandfather at a VA hospital, and he had some kind of surgery. I really don't know what it was, but he was very, very upset because he showed us where they cut him at the abdomen, and they made a cut like this, and they used 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3. To suture that incision. 3 stitches. It took him a long time to get over that. And you just don't forget these things, because we're talking about human beings here. Men and women who have stepped up to the plate in the most egregious of violent condition, and the bureaucracy of this country, that it appears that it's hurry up and wait. Let's see what happens before we need to make it happen. Just like the housing codes here in Manchester. I keep repeating myself because there is a victim every day. There is a victimization of some kind every day. And I was watching Channel 22 the other day, and these people were organized at a table, and they were talking only about the legal aspect of getting these slum landlords that were served to come to court. That it can take up to 3 months, 3 months for a court date. But in the interim, I didn't hear one word about all of the inspection processes that allowed that landlord to get away with his or her housing violation and why they were being served. The issue of the inspection processes of this house of the city's housing is one that nobody wants to address. At least it would appear that way. I had a talk with Pat Long the other day on the phone, and I was talking about the Manchester Historical Society and the fact that they have all of this greenery that obstructs the view that I speak to quite regularly. And he said that it was a privately owned building. But in the city of Manchester, you have to fill out certain papers, and there's a certain sense of code requirement to be issued a license to operate. And so they won't trim those hedges that obstruct, because the hedges are, this is the sidewalk, okay? This is the side street where Manchester Housing, not Manchester Housing, but Manchester Historical Society is located. And this is Pine Street, and over here is Light. Well, there is a raised platform, for lack of another way to put it, where there is soil and grass and hedges. And they're situated all along here like this. They obstruct the view because the stop sign is over here. So in order for you to get past that obstruction, you have to put your car in how can I say this? You have to put yourself in jeopardy and your car so that you can see beyond all of that obstruction whether or not cars are coming, because there's also cars parked here. So you have three obstructions. And I was told that there hadn't been an accident there in 5 years, so that makes it absolutely okay to continue to obstruct the view of the oncoming traffic. The house on the corner of Brook and Pine Street, it was taken over by somebody else, and the housing code of the city of Manchester says it can't be more than 4 feet high, any of the shrubbery. But the former owner got away with it for so long that the new owner is getting away with it. They trim one hedge, but there's all of these like this that go along the side of the house. Again, because the stop sign is here and Pine Street is here, you have to inch your car out to see if cars are coming. And so this guy refuses to trim his hedges. And he's going to get away with it, and he's been getting away with it. But there are codes that say that he's supposed to comply. And if I'm wrong, I will apologize, but I don't think so, because I have a book of code compliance, a copy from that department. It's supposed to be no higher than 4 feet. And if the stop sign, or if the visibility of oncoming traffic was somehow better provided, then that would be a different story, because Pat Long agreed that there were a lot of accidents at that intersection. So I don't know if it's going to take somebody getting killed there, because sometimes the traffic that comes down Pine Street, you would think that they were at the Indy 500 instead of going to 30 miles an hour that they're supposed to go. And then because the traffic is coming this way, they can't see that a car is trying to see if they can get across because they're obstructed by all of that shrubbery. And the poles, there's 2 double poles there. And again, the stop sign is here, the 2 poles are here, and the shrubbery is here, and it's this high. So what happened to the responsibility factor? What happened to the what-if factor? The what-if factor does not appear to be any part of any of these concerns. It's the immediate need that the greed need that they need to feed themselves because they need it right away. And tragedies that continue to happen to human beings, and they sit there on their posteriors, totally protected from all of these dangers, so they don't seem to care. And the rules might as well be printed on with invisible ink, because nobody's paying attention. Nobody is enforcing the codes and the rules and the safety of its citizens. Pine Street is notorious for accidents. It really is. So I don't understand. I can understand how young people, because I retaliated as a young person because I couldn't understand what the heck was going on, because it was the do as I say, not as I do mentality and procedures that were part of my upbringing, my education, and the contradictions, the incredible level of contradictions that that were part of everyday life. And so how are kids supposed to make sense of what doesn't make sense? How are young people supposed to handle, all of these double and triple standards? And this boy, if he's caught and it's proven that he's not mentally challenged by some condition, his family or his parents or his grandparents, whoever turned him into the monster that he is, they're not going to do the time. This kid is. Consider that when you think that you want to do something wrong. Consider the fact that just because you were taught to be a certain way that is totally unconstitutional and illegal, that your family and those elders or those friends, they're not going to do your time. If you get caught and you go to jail, you're going to do the time. I say this every week. Freedom isn't free if you don't fight for it. If you don't demand it, there's going to be the sound of goose stepping, loud and clear. Right now you can't hear it yet, but it's coming if we don't fight for the promise that the Constitution holds. And why has it been allowed to happen? What is the agenda? That is my endless question. What is the agenda of those that have violated the rights of so many citizens in this community, state, and country? the hidden agenda that we don't know about. It's very obvious that they're trying to eliminate as much human life as possible through all kinds of poisonous medications, poisonous air, poisonous seeds, poisonous drinking water, poisonous medications, and slum housing. So give it some thought, and when you're going to go to vote for the next mayor of the city of Manchester, please give it some serious thought. Remember that freedom isn't free, and so long until next time.